Welcome to How to Trust Your Intuition, the podcast, the place where we learn that trust is earned and not given, even with ourselves. I'm your host, Betsy LaFay. I'm a social worker, turned award-winning psychic medium, turned intuition teacher. And my school, Trust Yourself Intuition School, celebrated its 10th anniversary in 2023. Join us each episode as we interview thought leaders and luminaries in every genre. They talk about how and when they learn to trust their intuition. Most say they're still learning. What happens when they do trust it and what happens when they don't. Stick around as we all walk together down the road towards trusting our intuition. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of How to Trust Your Intuition. I could not be more excited about today's guest. Today, we have Maya Diamond on the show. Maya Diamond's group program, Rewire For Love, is the number one biggest tool, help, assist, change I've ever experienced in my personal life. If you've been listening to the show, you've been hearing the ads for her program. Interviewing her was an absolute delight, and it just felt like we were having the most fun tennis match. I'm not personally into tennis, but it felt like we were playing, and I just wanted to play for hours with her. Maya is a trained psychotherapist with a master's degree in Somatic Psychology from the California Institute of Integral Studies. She hosts the podcast, Rewire Your Attachment Style with Maya Diamond. Maya Diamond is an expert dating and relationship coach known for helping women and men finally find their beloved after years of trying to have happy, satisfying, and fulfilling relationships. She co-founded the group program Rewire For Love that I mentioned I am a graduate of. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation with Maya Diamond. Well, welcome Maya Diamond to the show.
Thank you. So wonderful to be here.
So please tell the audience about yourself. What is it you'd like them to know?
I live in Marin, California. I have been a love and relationship coach for the last 15 years. And I specialize in helping women who have the pattern of attracting unavailable people, narcissist, toxic relationships, shift those patterns and really become internally secure and find healthy, loving relationships.
And I am a product of your wonderful work, I have to say. We'll get into that.
Yes.
And you do have a program called Rewire For Love, right?
Yes. So my program, I created a group coaching program called Rewire For Love, which you did, and that's how we met. And this program is a 4-month program specifically for women. And we really dive deep to do the deeper healing work that's needed to shift these patterns in a very short amount of time. I think that's part of the brilliance of the program because it's an intensive, you're getting coaching from me, coaching from your coach, as well as a group of women supporting you that are also going through it. There's just a lot of change that happens in a short amount of time, which is really powerful.
Mm-hmm. I have some stuff I want to say about that, but I do want to ask you, so I think I might have told you this at some point in the past, but you're one of my favorite type of people, therapist turned coach. And I do mean that. And there's reasons behind it. I think we're all pretty much aware now, like anyone can just hang a shingle out and be like, I'm a life coach, right?
Yeah, totally.
And they can also say, I'm a trauma-informed life coach, and that can also mean nothing. And so somebody, I'm not a therapist turned coach, but I'm a social worker turned coach. So, pretty close, but somebody who has that background. I'm also not super focused on educational background because I think we're a little bit behind the times, but knowing that you have ethics, that you have a background, that you know what to do in emergencies, that you can recognize trauma and things like this, red flags. That's something I think is a very special and needed type of niche in today's world. So I just
Thank
wanted to
you.
put that out there. Yeah. And
Yeah.
how did you, so first of all, I took the program and it absolutely changed my life. I'll talk a little bit more about that, but I want to know, how did you all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to put together this program and it's going to, like, how did that come about?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. What a great question. So it's an amazing story. So I was working with, it's a fun story. So I was working with women one-on-one for like when we started the program, for 9 years. And my friend moved, a woman that I didn't know moved into my house. And she was in a very unavailable relationship, and she was having a lot of anxiety and a lot of symptoms of all sorts of anxiety symptoms. And she was kind of like a wreck about this guy she was dating. And I was like, have you read the book Attached? And so, or no, I don't think I said that. I think I was like, you have to read the book Attached.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, okay. And so she read it in one day and she broke up with the guy. And that's how we began, part of how we began our friendship. And we just became very close friends.
Mm-hmm.
And she saw me doing my work. That was actually, as that time I was in the process of getting licensed as a therapist. I was going through my exams. So I was, being a coach, being a love coach and becoming a therapist at the same time. It was a lot of work and a very important time in my life. And anyway, so we ended up living together for a long time. And I think it was the second year, she was like, hey, do you want to do like a group coaching program about the work that you're already doing? Which was a dream come true for me, because about 3 years prior, I was like, I know I want to create this program, but I just need to wait. I need to be able to hire all the tech people to do all that stuff. And it ended up, she knew how to do all the things that I didn't know how to do. So it was really a blessed moment, because not only did I get to create it with my best friend, but also someone who had a lot of strengths that I didn't have, which is one of the best things for business partnership, is like find someone who shared mission, shared purpose, but different strengths.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how we first started the Empower Love business.
Wow. Wow. I don't expect a yes, no, or kind of answer to this. I'm really curious, but when I finally created Trust Yourself Intuition School, which turned 10 this year.
Yay!
Yeah, really, really cool.
It's a huge milestone.
It really is. And what's interesting is like, I am totally ready, willing, and able to update it, but I've never needed to update it because it works.
Yes.
So it's really, really beautiful. So when I got that, it was really, an intuitive download, and I said yes to it. I took the leap.
Yes.
I typically get overwhelmed easily. So I was overwhelmed, but then I just sat down, and in a moment of clarity, Spirit was like, it's going to be 6 weeks long. And all of the things some of it I knew, and some of it I was just like basically downloading. I think that's overused, but it's true. Yes. And I jotted down all these exercises and all these concepts. And then I was like, oh, wow, this is 6 weeks worth of information. I just need to put it in order.
Yeah.
And now we're 10 years later. Countless people now trust their intuition. How did you come up with 4 months with you have an amazing online curriculum that goes with it as well?
Thank you. So yeah, I had already, my containers for coaching were always, I work with you for 4 months and then we can continue, but there's always an initial 4-month commitment, because I found over the years, well, first of all, it takes 3 months to change a habit. And then I want 1 month to really like cement it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's part of it. And I also believe like 4 months exactly is a really powerful amount of time to really exactly go deep, shift habits, all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's how I decided on that. And then in terms of the group coaching format, I knew I wanted to coach the women. I knew I wanted live coaching because I feel like that's when we really exactly get to go deep, shift the patterns, do the transformational work, and really have that didactic learning, live learning, because there's something about the live coaching, because there's so many online courses out there. But when you're actually getting live coaching, that's when you can see the coach can see what's in your shadow, can see what's in your blind spot. And so I knew I needed that. And then all of the modules, I love what you were saying about the downloads, because I was like, there was a lot of downloading happening. I had been doing the work already for a very long time, and for 9 years. And so it just like, as soon as I would sit down to write the module, it would just come through me very easily and quickly.
Yeah.
It was really and there were some modules maybe that took a little more work, but it was very easy to create it. I just needed someone to hold my hand through the process of creating it, which my best friend was doing. So I really was lucky to have that partner. And it's amazing how this is a great reminder, because I'm creating a course right now. And it's just amazing how when you say like, okay, like I'm doing, for all the people listening who want to create something, like I'm doing this, I'm sitting down, you really have to take that time to prioritize creating something, because there's so many distractions in this world. And if we hadn't done that, then like all these hundreds of women wouldn't have these transformations. So just like a plug for everyone, that creative spark, like listening to it.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And it's kind of neither here nor there, but just keeps coming up. Well, first of all, your team does a really good job when you're onboarding someone new, letting them know that this is an intensive. Like I just want to, like 3.5 years ago, 4 years ago, when I did this, like it was clear to me, and I know, we do not have control on how people take that into their lives. So I'm sure not trying to be an A+ student for your sake, but I heard that and I was like, I need this. And I like shifted my whole life down like several gears to just show up to this. I mean, it's absolutely needed. And I've only been exposed to maybe 1 or 2 other group programs, but I mean, I don't really want to go on a downward spiral of how terrible they were, but they just were absolutely terrible. And it didn't necessarily like turn me off of group programs. When I got into yours, I just found out that like it really was almost like the quintessential of what you want a group program to be. I found every single time I showed up to a group coaching call, knowing I would get coached as well, spending that time listening to every other person's story of what they were going through was so helpful. And just in a very specific way that, on this long journey of rewiring for love, I was in this one little baby step in like a million steps. And all the other people were in all of their other steps that I would be eventually. And I just got to hear, it's like, oh, I totally would have done that. Like, what is it that like, what should I look out for? Or what would I need to do in those situations? So, excellent job. Excellent job. It does require a commitment to make that shift. But when you have people, this is the thing I wanted to say, when you have people so committed, and I can see it in you and feel it in you now. And it's similar in the group coaching that it's the same thing when I'm teaching. It's my favorite thing that I like to do. And so when you show up to the group calls with you or any other coach, it's apparent as well that like, I mean, I thank my students after class. I'm like, thank you for showing up. This is my favorite thing to do on the planet. So you're helping me. And it's just very apparent with you that this is like, this brings you joy.
That I love to do. Yeah. I'm so passionate about it. And I once learned that when you have concentric circles of passion, purpose, so you care about the meaning, you're actually excited about it, which is passion, and you're really good at it. So you're effective. So passion, purpose, and effectiveness, passion, meaning, and effectiveness, that's when you're the most successful.
Okay.
And so that's like such a key piece to finding a career that you love. I learned that in this amazing workshop once. But what you're talking, I just want to kind of tag on what you're talking about around the borrowed benefit. My teacher calls it borrowed benefits. So when you're in a group coaching container, you're getting the benefits not only of being coached, but also of all the other people getting coached, because exactly, you're hearing yourself being reflected in their stories. You're hearing my teaching and coaching on, or the coaches teaching and coaching on that person's issues. And so you're getting, it's like, exponential. It's like, 10 times, 20 times, 30 times, 40 times. It's like, if I was good at math, I could explain that better. But I'm not. So yeah, I feel like we're so in this age of Aquarius where we're really getting the power of the group coaching, group memberships, like really the community, the tribe, and how valuable that is for our growth and learning and healing.
Yeah. You're all ready for your vacation. It's really hectic getting here, but you're seated in your airplane seat, looking out the window, and you hear the pilot come on the intercom. Good day, everyone. It's a beautiful day outside, 71 and sunny. As you're aware, to get to where we're going, we need to fly over that mountain range, and sometimes there can be a little bit of turbulence. I'm about 80% sure we'll get there safely. So buckle up, relax, and enjoy your flight. I know that sounds like an absurd situation, but when I put this in context of trusting yourself and trusting your intuition, and I ask people on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most, how much do you trust yourself? 8 is a very high score when asking people. So if you fall on a 2 to 4 range, you're totally not alone. Now picture this other scenario. You're out to lunch with a friend, and the friend says that they've been having a really difficult time learning French. You ask the logical question, are you taking a class? And their answer is, well, I'm taking Spanish. Guess what? If you want to trust yourself deeply, if you want to have an easier time making decisions, break through blocks, connect with people, know who to connect with when, there's a class for that. I've actually helped thousands of people truly trust themselves in uncertainty, in times of doubt or fear, shame or guilt. And I have a free masterclass called Intuition 101, How to Trust Yourself in Uncertain Times, that will tell you everything you need to know in order to learn to trust yourself. The link is in the show notes. However, you can also go to howtotrustyourintuition.com, all spelled out. Yep. And while you were talking, I'm like, wow, I actually have heard my students say the same thing. I'm just like, oh, that's pretty neat. It's pretty cool.
Totally.
One of the things that kind of just blows my mind in general about my experience with this work is, I graduated with a psychology degree in 2002. Yeah. And I mean, you already know this, but like in 2002, attachment was only associated with child development, right? And I wasn't like reading Psychology Today for the past 2 decades or whatever. I was not keeping up with that. And so what got me to Rewire Your Love was I was in a horrendous coaching relationship. Somebody was coaching me. And through that experience, I came across your work. Sometimes I really do feel that the Facebook algorithm and their ads does me so well. Like it's great. It's great for me. But like that was the moment that I learned about attachment theory in adults was the moment that I saw your thing on Facebook. And literally I was enrolled within 48 hours. Right. And it was a great welcome call, introduction call. And it was it was funny, not funny, but I was getting counseled and I was saying all these terrible things that the coach was doing and saying like, is this normal? Is this okay? And at one point they're like, wait, this isn't a lover that you're talking about. This is a coach. And I was like, yeah. And they're like, no, you need to get out of there. Yeah. And that's kind of the silver lining to that experience. But my mind is blown because, again, that was 3.5 years ago. A lot has changed in terms of the awareness of attachment in adults. And, now, thankfully, people are applying it to friendships. They know about it in animals, right? So coworkers.
Yeah, work. Exactly.
Exactly. And it's so wonderful to see it proliferating like this and having it shift people's lives.
It's a huge shift to watch it in the last 15 years, like since I started.
Right. And I'm just like, I'd never heard of this. I did a program, I rewired, and now it's everywhere. Yes. It was just such a gift to me. And I want to say, when I went into the program, so I think, and correct me if you feel like this is anything that isn't your intention. I feel like with the course, it says Rewire for Love, which is the purpose, right? To have a healthy, loving relationship.
Yes.
But in order to have the healthy relationship, you need to rewire your attachment style. Yes. And so when I went in, there was something sort of intuitively in me that was like, I'm not ready for a relationship. I didn't know what it was, but I know I need to rewire it, and I know this program will help me. So I went in day one, not to rewire for love, but to rewire. Nevertheless, without giving away any of the stuff that's in the course, I went through it as though I was interested, because it forced me to interact with people in a way that was helpful. Right. And it completely worked. I wrote you in Facebook a little bit about this, but what happened was I rewired and then went back to live with my family, and I had changed into a healthy, basically non-codependent person, as my therapist, can confirm, and broke the system, basically, the family system. Yeah. And what was amazing was the work that we did in Rewire Your Love and all of the work I've been doing previously. When I showed up to those toxic situations, which of course escalated because I was not participating in them, right? So, the tantrums got worse, and that's putting it mildly. But even as things really got really abusive and toxic, I literally remained calm the whole time, because I even had this awareness that like there's a mental illness going on that I wasn't aware of. And so like, although, it did affect me, I was literally just able to show up and be like, I just need you to be kind to me, just like putting up the boundary, which was never honored. And then for better or for worse, I got completely kicked out, which in that situation is the best thing, because they weren't going to be able to be healthy individuals, but I would never have left on my own. But I really do credit, out of all of the work that I was doing, if I had not rewired, I would not have recognized that these are extraordinarily unhealthy and toxic patterns. So I just wanted to share that with you. Like, I wouldn't be who or where I am today without that work.
Beautiful. And I think I just want to, take that in. That's such a huge, huge thing that you're saying, which is, I think there's two parts to it, which is one, the ability to like see and recognize the patterns of the people that you are dealing with, because that's something that we really go into in the program, which is how to discern who is healthy, who is not healthy, what are the unhealthy flags, what are the healthy flags, which is so instrumental. But then also you being able to state your boundary in the face of someone close to you that is not being kind to you, because that is a huge thing for women, and something that we really work on so much, because it is so hard for women. And I can say for myself, I've been working on boundaries intensely because I thought I had worked on them. And then the last 3 years, I had to do more work on them. And so there's just so many layers to boundaries, to not go into freeze, flight, fawn, all of the trauma defense responses because you're scared, because you feel unsafe, all of that. So to be able to, exactly, I 100% agree that is proof that the program was so powerful in your nervous system.
Yes.
And in your voice to be able to do that. So powerful.
Yep. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I just have to say, I am always working on boundaries, and especially that.
As empaths, we're both of us are empaths and intuitive and probably psychic, right? So those, just for everyone listening, if you have that, then it's like the equal amount that you have to work on boundaries, right? Because it's like you feel everything, you want to help all these people, you want to be compassionate, all of that stuff. So like it really has to be anchored in healthy boundaries. Otherwise, we can get really, really hurt.
Well, here's something that I like.
And overgive as well.
Yes. It's the truth. It sounds hard, and it can be, but like, it's very interesting. Sometimes I think my life is more extreme than maybe the average person, so that I can walk through fire and teach other people how to, right? So most people will not live some of the extreme situations that I've lived through. But when I went back, I'm not exaggerating, the entire biological and even friends associated with my biological family was in toxicity. And so I was trying to think of an analogy. So like, if I showed up to Empower Love and I either was dating someone or, had a partner, and I was like, okay, so every time I put up a boundary, they scream their head off at me and prevent me from doing my work. And they tell me I have to do chores when I'm trying to take care of myself, and they interrupt my sleep. You wouldn't say this in the coaching program directly like this, but you might want to be like, get the F away from that person, right? Like, there's no amount of coaching or teaching or therapy that will get that toxic person to shift. And so it's very interesting, because I think there are people out there who are like, it's almost like starved for oxygen. There might be 1 or 2 people in their lives that if they say, oh, actually, I'm going to sleep in, that person's like, okay, cool, I'll make other plans. But that everyone else around them is going to be boundary pushers and all of this. And it's like, I think a lot of times we think, well, I just need to work on boundaries, when really it might be, you just might need to do some pruning in the people that you're around, or,
which is boundaries. That's a form of boundaries.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Pruning is a form of boundaries, and it's a more strong form of boundaries. And exactly, that is incredibly, it's like exactly almost, I feel like the metaphor that you're talking about is like, you're in like, you're like in a pond, and the entire pond has people that are not kind, loving, caring, respectful, responsive. And so also I want to just mention for the people listening, that's part of why putting yourself in a group program, surrounding yourself with people who are supportive, kind, loving, respectful, responsive, actually helps you rewire that in itself, because context, environment is so key, as Bruce Lipton talks about, which is like how our cells take on the environment that they are in, which is why we have to create a healthy environment in our body for our cells to thrive. It's the same thing. It's like, put yourself in a group of people that are incredibly challenging over time. That's just so hard for the human to withstand. And so I want to just speak to something that I think also that you're referring to, which is something that I think I do really well in my coaching and in the program, is I help you say no to that narcissist, to that toxic person, walk away, which I think is one of my biggest strengths as a coach, is I'm not going to tell you to stay in something that isn't working and for us to work to make it work. I'm actually going to say, like, I think leaving is the best thing. I will tell you my opinion, and I will tell you all the reasons why, and I will support you no matter what. And that's always the way that I coach, because if you disagree with me and say, no, I actually think this is for my greatest good, I will support you. I will always know that if I'm not telling you that this is a toxic relationship and this is actually going to hurt you now and in the long run, then I don't feel like I'm in integrity with what you hired me to do, which is help you have a loving, healthy relationship. So that's something that I honestly don't see. Why I want to talk about it also is I don't see coaches being strong in that powerful, this is what I see, and I'm going to hold you to what you say you want. And I think that is one of my greatest strengths, is I will hold your feet to the fire no matter what. And that takes a lot of like masculine energy, actually. It's very masculine. I love talking about masculine, feminine stuff, and it's masculine. Yeah.
Well, you also really shone a light on why I love therapists turned coaches, because we really don't need to get on a long tangent, although I think you and I could talk for hours about this topic. That like
topic.
I have a difficulty. I mean, I think my therapist is the perfect match for me right now. May not be tomorrow, probably will be, but due to her professional boundaries that she is bound to, she cannot really offer me her opinion of what she thinks I should do with this relationship. There's that. And then there's also this weirdness of like,
and I just want to highlight one thing, what you just said. She is not trained to do that. Exactly. She's not trained to do that. That's not in her scope of practice. What therapists are trained to do, because I went through the training, is we're trained to help you find your own answers, which is wonderful. That's a wonderful thing. And sometimes if you're in toxic patterns, you need someone who's actually going to guide you, stronger guidance. That's all.
And it just feels, I really love how you highlighted the training part.
It's a different thing. Go ahead.
Absolutely. And the training, I think, is really important. I also just want to say, like, it feels very strange to me that I'm seeing my therapist once or twice a week. We get along really great. And I know next to nothing about her. I mean, every now and then she'll slip in something about her life. And we've actually processed, we talked about this. I'm like, I know you can't really, but like, it feels weird for me to be telling you for an hour or two a week all about me.
Right.
And then I never get to ask you.
Totally.
How are you doing? I mean, I do ask her that, but it's a weird thing. And
it's a very different model.
Yeah. So anyways, I'm very, very grateful for this program. Oh, and without giving anything away that you do in the program, I heard something, I think it was on NPR, I'm not sure, recently, where they said, I mean, I actually don't have any more background on this. I kind of am skeptical about the fact of the statement of it, but they said that there's been recent research that says that narcissists can change if they do this specific thing, and I'll be a little bit vague here, but they go back and they examine what they didn't get from when they were a kid and sort of bring that about. And I was like, oh, we kind of did something like that, and that worked for me, but I'm like, for freaking narcissists? Like, I mean, it makes sense because it was so powerful for me. Like, it really shifted everything when I did that. And I know that it works, but like,
I do think that if someone, because I know people as well. So I think that if someone is incredibly dedicated to their personal growth, and that would mean that they're narcissists usually are not, but there are some who become so. And so if they're incredibly dedicated to really looking at that stuff, they can start to come into more of a healthy way of being able to have true empathy, because they've given themselves that true empathy. They've given that young little boy or girl that loving empathy that they didn't receive, which then hopefully builds that empathy in their body. Because to me, that's one of the biggest traits of a narcissist, is that deep lack of empathy. So if they're building that in their nervous system, in their heart, then they can be more empathic towards others, which makes them more into a healthy, secure sense of self. So I think it just takes a lot of diligence and a lot of commitment and a lot of perseverance, but I think it's totally possible.
You weren't trying to convince me. I know that you're just speaking on it, but you did effectively convince me. I think I still have like a little bit of a chip on my shoulder or eye roll, just because in my life, in the past, and even in the present, I'm overcoming the like, what if, sort of like, well, what if he changes, or what if she changes, like, which next to 0 times happens. And I think we fall in love. I mean, we fall into that Cinderella trap and things like that. And I think taken out of context again, and like it could put someone as an empath being like, well, they are dedicated to, you know, self-improvement. It's like, no, unless they're really doing that deep therapeutic work, it's a no.
I would say they need to be exactly in an intensive program like mine. And I do one-on, if you're listening and you know, I do one-on-one work with men, and I have a program for men. So I've created now a program for men. So it's Rewire for Love for men, but I do it one-on-one with them. And then, and if they're doing couples therapy, I would say like both would be the highest combination that I would recommend if you're with someone who's an avoidant and a narcissist, or one of the two, because narcissism and avoidance can go together, not always, but both of those things need a lot of deep healing work. And I have a lot of episodes on my podcast about avoidant attachment. I've been doing kind of a series. I've now done just two, but they've both been very powerful, with men who are more avoidant, who are both therapists, who are becoming either like one of them is more basically around the process of becoming securely attached. And so it really does give you that hope.
Yes.
For someone who's avoidant to listen, it gives you that hope, but also if you have an avoidant partner that you're incredibly committed to, it also gives you that hope.
Yeah.
Also, if you're anxious and you're in a relationship with an avoidant, I definitely recommend doing the Rewire for Love program, because it will help you become more secure and figure out and hopefully the relationship will become more secure, which we see over and over again, because you're able to not be as anxious. So then the anxious avoidant trap isn't as strong, and the relationship becomes more secure, or you figure out like, this isn't the relationship for me. But you come to that from like the most empowered, secure, loving, self-loving place, which is incredible to come from that place, whatever you decide. And it's magic to watch women come into that higher. And we've seen miracles in people's relationships coming into the program, where they feel like the relationship has to end, but they start changing, and then the whole relationship changes. So you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know.
Yeah. When I was doing intimacy and relationship coaching and stuff like that, that was it. It was like, yep, if you change, the relationship changes. And
or if it's not right, then you leave, and that's okay.
Yep. Exactly. Oh, this is so exciting. It's some of my favorite topics.
Yes.
Well, let's switch gears a little bit. I'd love to hear about you and learning about intuition, learning to trust it, and all of that.
That's one of my favorite topics. So in terms of learning to trust my own intuition, first of all, I want to say I realized only in the last year, and so it's really important part of my developmental track around intuition, because it's something I've been strengthening since grad school, for sure, like consciously working on and strengthening since grad school, which is I realized in the last year or 2 years that like I grew up with a parent who doubted my knowing. And a lot of people have that. So I want to say it so people can recognize it in themselves. Like, did your parents doubt your truth, doubt your knowing? So I only know that because I started realizing when I talked to one of my parents now that, oh, wow, like most of my knowing, this person questions. Like that's what happens when someone doubts your knowing. They question what you're saying. So that created a lack.
Wait, are you sure about that? I'm not so sure. I'm sorry, I had to.
So good. So good. So yeah, and I can feel my body. It's like, wait, but now I have to prove myself. So
It's perfect and mean, and I'm sorry, but it's hilarious.
No, it was perfect. So then, yeah, so rebuilding that trust in your knowing has to happen. You have to go back and rebuild that trust in your knowing.
Mm-hmm.
So on the one hand, I have so much intuition, so much psychic intuition that comes through for everyone who's into astrology. I have Mercury in Pisces in the 8th house. I have a Cancer moon in the 12th house. So it's like double water in both houses and signs. So anyways, what I've found is I get a lot of intuition in my belly. I get a lot of like voices that tell me things like, oh, seems like say if you're dating, right? Seems like this person isn't really ready for that, and it's just like this quick knowing that's like,
mm-hmm.
And so I've really had to redevelop listening to that,
mm-hmm.
which I've done with my own coaches, my own therapists, my own healers, to like kind of unravel the trauma from the not knowing,
mm-hmm.
because that allows you to listen and retrust. And the biggest thing I think for me is to like get quiet and listen in, like when I'm by myself,
mm-hmm.
and write down the things I hear, write down the knowing, like really reify it, I have to validate my own knowing because it wasn't validated.
Yeah.
And so I think that's part of the healing is, having your coach or your therapist validate your knowing, but also for you to do it through that listening and sitting with like, oh yeah, that is the truth. That is the truth. That is the truth. Because we are wired for this knowing. We're wired to listen. We're wired, our bodies. That's part of why I love human design, because it really talks about like, oh, our bodies are wired for this information and we get to respond to it.
Mm-hmm.
But if we don't respond to it and we bypass the knowing, for example, with one of my exes, I had this pivotal moment in our relationship when he told me that he wanted to move to another town. So that means I would have to leave the town that I was living in, give up my house that I was living in to move to his town that he grew up with, to move into a house that his dad was buying for us. So that was all like positive in many ways. But my intuition was like, I don't want to move there unless we're engaged. Like that was so freaking clear in myself, in my body. But I bypassed that knowing because I was afraid that if I said that and put that truth and that boundary, that the relationship would end.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I have chills it's like so intense right now talking about it. It's like, I can feel the power of that truth. And
mm-hmm.
instead of that moment, I bypassed it, moved to his town, and spent the next year and a half dealing with his, working through his ambivalence around marriage,
mm-hmm.
and that couldn't get solved. And so I had to leave.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, the truth was like, we could have dealt with that truth then. Like,
yeah.
Oh no, I have a ton of ambivalence around marriage and children. Let's it would have all come out then had I put that boundary then. And it would have all, again, like the truth comes out, right? whether you delay it or not. That's
Mhm.
one of my biggest personal lessons. Like,
Mhm.
so better, let's get to the truth now rather than later.
Mhm.
So but that moment, I really have so much regret
Yeah.
for not speaking my truth, not listening to my knowing, and not putting my boundary. And those are all the things that I teach. And of course, we teach what we need to learn. And so I've gotten the lesson now. But that is one of the biggest things I want women to know is like, listen to that voice, listen to your body, listen to what you need that's going to create safety for you.
When I graduated with a BA in psychology in 2002, attachment work was only applied to children. Now, in 2023, it seems to be all the rage for a reason, because knowing your attachment type, there are three main types: avoidant, anxious, and secure, really changes your life. And if you listen to the podcast where I talked about how I lost $100,000 from a spiritual, quote unquote, spiritual coach, the silver lining to that experience was me discovering the root of a lot of my issues. I was anxiously attached. I had anxious attachment. At the very end of that terrible, terrible situation, yes, it was traumatic, I came across Maya Diamond's work. And it was working through her program that literally rewired my brain from anxious to secure. This is how I made it through all of my major transitions over the past 2 years and discovered so much about myself. Now, if you don't know about attachment work, don't feel bad. Here's a typical situation, in fact, the most common situation that happens with these attachment styles. Person A and person B are in a relationship. They care about one another. Person A reaches out to person B, doesn't hear back right away. So then maybe sends another text or another gesture, which further pushes person B away. Both people get resentful, and eventually they might break up. I was in that situation more often than I'd like to remember. I married the wrong person, I had toxic family relationships, and had no idea until I took Maya's program. So, the link for a free consultation is in the show notes, and I'm so happy to offer it all the podcast listeners. If you sign up for her program, you will get a free session worth $500 with Maya Diamond herself, one-on-one. That's just for How to Trust Your Intuition podcast listeners.
Yeah. My intuition speaks in all the ways it can speak. And as you were talking, my ear itched. And that when that happens, that means what's happening is speaking it's a ring of truth. So it's like,
wow.
It's like, woo, like, absolutely. I mean, you answered two questions, right? Like, what happens if you don't trust your intuition? It's interesting because I interviewed someone yesterday, and before we started recording, she was like, oh my gosh, I'd love to flip the tables sometime and like interview you with these same questions. And it got me thinking this morning. I was like, oh, like, what would I share? And it's interesting. It's such a parallel to your story where I was on the first date with, well, actually, I hadn't met this person yet, and we're about to go on the first date. And I locked my bike up around the corner, and I was about to turn the corner to lay eyes on this person for the first time. And I heard in a full sentence, if he's wearing all black, he's not for you. And what was he wearing? All black. And guess what I did? I married him.
Yeah.
And so,
it was like that clear knowing at the beginning.
Yep. And then there was all sorts of things along the way, I want to bring
that wasn't the only sign.
Of course. Yeah. I want to give a call back because this is something that I don't know if there's a name for it, but I've experienced it a bunch, and we had it happen on here. So I'm going to share what happened to me, and it'll become obvious about what I'm talking about. Yeah. So I think it was it was right before I started taking Rewire for Love, and I was healing from a toxic relationship. It was the marriage. I was out of it. And I wound up being close friends with these two guys who are both comedians, and they're very caring people. And, I was, basically detoxing from this toxic relationship. So I would be sharing kind of not so nice stories like, well, when we were on this trip, this is what happened and whatever. Just getting it out. We were on this road trip, the three of us, and it was so wonderful because each one of them was like, wow, look at the mountains. Aren't they pretty? And someone else would be like, look at those flowers. And I was like, this is great. That's exactly what I would do. Like, look at the sunset, whatever. So I shared this story. I was like, well, when I was married, this is really what would happen. We would be on a road trip and I would be driving and he would just be on his phone the whole time. And I'd be like, wow, look at the sunset. It was gorgeous. And he literally would get angry and yell at me. And one time he literally yelled the words, why are you always telling me to look at beautiful things? But he was like super angry.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And that in itself is hilarious, right?
Yeah.
So then,
totally.
And so I told them that story, and obviously they're the opposite. And then, like within like maybe 60 seconds or something, maybe like 2 minutes, I was like, "Oh wow, guys! Like, look at the mountains." And one of them turned around and like it was fake angry, but in the beginning you don't know. And he's like, "Why are you always telling me to look at beautiful things?" And like I did too, be like, oh, are you sure? Like I felt it in my body because I was like, oh my gosh, and the trauma came up. But then it was like I'm with safe, loving people who are making a joke of it, and it like alchemized that energy and like really helped me heal. Like I would never want anyone to do this outside of a completely caring, like I know this person, we have rapport relationship. But it was so interesting because I did take a moment to check myself and be like, am I going to ask her if she's sure? And I was like, that's going to be funny. But I witnessed it in front of you. You're like, oh, I feel it in my body. But then you just like started to laugh and you're like, oh, wow, this is great. Like, it's something that I feel like it's a clear indicator of like the healing of comedy, but like a very specific one. Like, have you
I
ever?
love it. I love what you're talking about. It reminds me, I've gone deep into existential kink, as you know, and all of that kink work is really about that, which is like we're using the moment to kind of heal trauma in a more taboo way. So it's like part of that is comedy, part of that is erotic. And so there's so many ways that we can access the healing of our trauma in unconventional ways. And I love that, like using humor because it comes from love.
Yeah.
Exactly. Your friend, you were doing it and your friend was coming from love. And it's like making humor of this thing that was so insane, like like not sane. It's not sane, these things that we do in our relationships. Sometimes they're not sane. They're emotional. It's like that was him having an emotional reaction based on his own trauma, his own pain, and he was projecting it out onto you instead of saying, I'm noticing when you're telling me to look at that, I know it's coming from a good place. I know how you really want to enjoy the sunset with me. And I'm noticing it's causing irritation right now. And I don't know why, but it's just really hard for me. It's like, if he would have said that, you have responded.
Yeah. Well, you'll be familiar with this. I mean, as I said, that is something that I generally do. If we were in the car together, I would be like, hey, look at that beautiful thing. I like to share that with people. But also in that context, it was an attempt to connect, right? That whole, like just in general, healthy relationship, but then also the anxious and the avoidant, right? So you're in the car for a long time. I make an attempt to connect. He doesn't have anywhere to go except to bark at me, to like push me away, right? So yeah, I mean, I would not have made that comment to you of "Are you sure?" unless we had this rapport, and as you knew you were safe with me.
No,
so
I feel that with you, 100%. We built that with 4 months connection.
That's really true. Well, how about a time when you trusted your intuition, despite logic, like it didn't make sense, but you did it anyway, and what happened?
I love that question. It's such a beautiful question. So I decided in the pandemic to I had to move out of my house because there was a bridge construction, and it was very like when the landlord told us, you guys have to move out of your house. There's bridge construction. It's going to be really loud. It actually sent me into a bit of a trauma response because I hate having to move when it's not my decision. Moving's the most stressful thing, da, 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 da. But then once I really sat with it, we were like, oh, let's go travel. And so I decided to go to Maui, and it was, I remember at the time thinking, this doesn't make any sense. It really felt not logical given some of the goals that I was working on in my life. It felt like, no, like on paper, this actually doesn't make sense. Now, of course, I'm like, yeah, it did. But it literally felt 100% like it did not make any sense. But I said to my women's group, I remember saying, but like, I feel so called. This feels so intuitively right.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I went to Maui, and within 5 days, I was like, I need to stay here longer than a month. And I ended up staying for almost a year. And it was one of the best decisions I've ever made in my entire life. And it was feeling so transformative, so beautiful to experience that island for all of that time at a really amazing time, because less people were on the island, and so many amazing friends from the Bay Area were there. It was a very special time. And now I have friends, so many amazing friends who live there.
That's so good. Yeah, it's such a archetypal story of like, because you can attach so many logical, more negative things to that. Like, well, that's so frivolous to do. Like, and especially someone who doesn't like to move, right? Like, yeah.
Oh, yeah. My mom was like, Maui's so mumuch more expensive than the Bay. I was like, no, it's actually cheaper.
Yeah. It's a pandemic. Like, you're going to take this long flight. And yeah, that's it. A lot of times, especially when we're younger, right? It's like, I really have this knowing to go do this thing, but then I call them the how dogs come up. So they're like, how, right? Like, how do this? When, it's like, all right, how dogs, like, chill out. Yeah. I don't know why, but when you feel that, and I will have to say, this is a beautiful thing that I've definitely noticed in my work, is that if you could be definitely avoidant too, but if you're avoidant or you're anxious and you're in trauma response, or you're triggered or you're anxious, from those states, you cannot listen to, feel, and or follow through with your intuition. You don't need to be completely healed to be able to tune in. And for me, myself, I was a professional for over a decade before I rewired. However, now I have much more connection on a moment-to-moment basis, and I'm able to navigate, especially relationships, a lot easier through that. So it's, you have the 5 clairs. You can see things, you can taste things, you can touch things. You have the inner knowing. You can have emotional knowing. Yeah, all those things, right? But also, our intuition speaks through our nervous system. Yeah. Which is exactly what the rest of the world speaks through. Like, every response that we have to any stimuli is through our nervous system.
Yes.
And then there's this unseen, unlogical thing. So sometimes people will think that they're having some kind of anxious response, as in like, I'm anxiously attached, when really it's their intuition saying, hey, back up. And I know you navigate those in the coaching program. I just wanted to let people know, like, you don't need to necessarily be completely secure and healed from that. But that's definitely something, if you're looking in general to improve your life, but to like trust yourself more, is to integrate that.
Yes, exactly. And that's the interesting thing, is I want to just really highlight this piece around, if we've had this early childhood trauma around attachment, around abandonment, around neglect, around, abuse, then it makes it so much harder to listen but more importantly, follow through and act on your intuition. And I want to just have compassion for all of that, because it's so easy, like for a long time, for that moment that I talked about with my ex, like I judged myself, I criticized myself, I blamed myself.
You gaslit yourself.
And yes, thank you. I shamed myself. Beautiful. Yeah. And that's trauma on top of trauma. That's pain on top of pain. That's shame on top of shame and blame on top of the pain that's already there. So instead, let's have compassion, because when we have that combination of the deep intuition and the trauma, it can be really hard to listen to it and to act upon it, because that means that you may lose the person.
Yes.
That means that you may lose the connection. That means that you may lose the hot man who actually can't give you what you want. That may mean that you have to go without connection with this person for a long time to get over them. Like that's hard, right? So it's letting go of something, maybe letting go, I guess something that one of my best friend talks about that I love, which is truth over harmony. So speaking the truth over, value truth over the harmony, over the peace.
Yeah.
Because it's not, peace is such a high value for so many people, especially, I don't know if you guys talk about Enneagram on your podcast. I'm so into all the personality systems, but if you're a 7, 2, or 9, those Enneagram types are very positive and harmony oriented. They want peace, they want harmony, they're conflict avoidant. And so you're valuing that more than the truth of, let me say the thing, even though it may hurt you, it may create a boundary between us, it may cause a breakup, right? You're valuing that truth over harmony. And that takes a lot of strength and power and work. Quite frankly, you've had a lot of trauma.
The way that I've been able to sort of make that message stick with the people that follow us is every person who's drawn to me, I feel like highly values authenticity, because that's what I highly value, right? So they can tell there's a match. So I'm like, okay, well, if you love authenticity, just imagine you're not actually sharing how you feel with people. And then you're coming to me saying, no one in my life is authentic.
Right.
So you don't like it when people are not authentic to you. Right. And so if you're actually keeping the peace over telling your truths, you're literally lying, which nobody wants to do. In this subset of people, they're like, that is the last I want to be authentic.
To be a liar.
Yeah. Exactly. And I just wanted to have a quick callback that, like,
love that.
The whole group aspect, that's something that I've been learning how to put into words of, like, as you said, it's so important to listen, trust, and follow through with your intuition. And as we know, at least in our culture, a lot of times it's counter-logical. And so if you happen to be surrounded, your mom was questioning it, right? Some friends may or may not have. But if you're surrounded by people who aren't in the boat of, like, someone's husband being like, she's always right, I don't question her, which happens probably after decades, right? And that's for the smart people on both ends. If you're not in that state, but then you come to class and you're like, you know what? Like, I have this feeling that I should be going to, it'd be great, my highest good, to go to Maui. Like, you will get, in the same way that you provide for your attachment people, like, my straight opinion. And I'll just put this as an interesting caveat from my teacher's perspective. Sometimes people will come from that excited, anxious space, trying to fix or trying to find, or in any real life situation, that Cinderella, like, if I get this job, everything will be great. Or if I publish this book, and they'll bring it up and I'll just go straight to the feeling, like, what is their nervous system doing, right? And it's a huge disappointment to them, where I'm just like, I'm not feeling like that's coming from the same place that we're talking about. Like, let's help you explore it in your body, when they really just want their teacher to approve and put a stamp and support them. But it's just like you, it's like, I'm not going to, distort the truth to make you happy, when in essence, we're trying to get you to learn something. So I've had some people like be like, I thought you were going to be supportive of my dream writing poems in a book. And I'm like, that's a great hobby. Like, started out, like, it's clearly something you want to do, but like the energy from which it's coming from is not the place that, you think it's coming from.
And that is so powerful. I really want to highlight what you said, because that's so valuable to have a mentor or a teacher who is willing to say the uncomfortable thing. And that, because exactly, we all have these desires. Like, right now I have like 10 desires that I'm so excited to manifest, right? I'm working on my book. I want to have a baby. I'm want to own a house in Marin. I want to travel to a beautiful tropical place soon because I'm missing my beach weather in Maui, like all the things, right? We have so many desires, especially, and some people do have a hard time connecting with their desires. I want to honor that too. And that's something
I was impressed with how connected you were.
It's like very like a natural
walking your talk. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just very, very, has always been easy for me to connect with my desires. But anyways, but exactly like what to follow when, which desire to work on when is like a very powerful skill that a human needs to do, to learn. And so to have a mentor to help you to decide, and that's the same thing with kind of dating. It's which person to keep connecting with is so huge. Like, but you have this desire for this person, you're attracted to this person, but is this the energy that you want to kind of go with? Is this desire that you want to connect with on a deeper level and form a relationship, which is almost like a project, a book? It's like that discernment. It's so nice to have someone who's going to help you in a deep way with that discernment.
Yep.
Because there's to uncover, because there's so many paths in our lives, many paths, and that choice that you make, like that choice that I made to move to that new town, right, then creates this cascade of all these other results, all these other consequences. And so to really sit with our decisions in a really beautiful way and have a mentor to help you, or, doing it in meditation, it's just so powerful. And I think that's something, that has taken me a while to really get the value of, because I, again, have such a strong, powerful, like desire and drive that I can just be like, okay, like, yes, like a quick yes. But that slowing down is so helpful. And that listening to the deeper, what's underneath it.
Yes.
What's underneath the poetry book? Is it, or what's underneath the desire to like be on Oprah talking about your work?
Right.
Is it like a true soul calling, or is it like an ego thing that's not actually going to bring you fulfillment?
Right. Exactly.
That's the question. Yeah.
Well, I will say most often it's the opposite. There's less than a handful of times where I had to be like, well, let's examine where that's coming from, because I'm not getting the same feeling. I'm not afraid to do that, but more often it's the other way, which I've seen you do in the coaching with relationships, where somebody says, I'm not sure. And you're like, no, that actually is very healthy. And in intuition school, it's like, okay, yeah, like I have this little thing, but I'm not sure. There is nearly nowhere else in the world that you're going to have a professional that can validate your intuition that has no logic behind it.
Right.
And this group of people who are doing the same thing, who can also feel, when we have Q&A, which is like the coaching, and we have practice. We also do breath work. But in the practice, even so, it's group work. And we'll see sometimes that several people will come up with the same information at the same time separately. So it's like, right? Yeah. Exactly. So it's just like, wait a minute. Betsy didn't even call on me and say I was right, but I literally got the same non-logical answer that person got. Like I've got like full body chills because like it's also super fun and like exciting, but it's like there's no better way to, again, it's not just me validating, it's the whole group. So oh my gosh, I just love the intertwining of all of
I know, totally. I
Yeah.
love this synergy. So
Yeah.
beautiful.
And I will say, I think it's important. I don't think I got like special treatment in your program. I think you learn what you learn about the person and you treat them accordingly, right? So I think that's what you're doing with me. And I say to every person who works with me, I'm like, just as you said earlier, you teach what you need to learn, right? So I have this school called Trust Yourself, Trust Your Intuition, and guess what I need to learn? So if
Guess what you became an expert
Exactly.
in? You became an expert in it because of your own trauma, your own childhood, your own challenges, but also your own strengths because you are a naturally intuitive person, right?
Yeah.
And so who else? Why wouldn't you want to learn from someone who had to go through that's like same with me. It's like every single challenge possible.
Yeah.
To heal this in myself in terms of anxious attachment. I've had to go heal every single piece of anxious attachment, disorganized attachment in myself, less of the avoidant attachment in myself, but those two for sure. It's really, and I'm making every single dating mistake in the book, like for real. It's like, oh yeah, made that one.
Yeah. And when I told you and the other coaches that, like, so feel free to at some point feed that back to me and say, you know what, Betsy, you need to trust yourself here. Like I think it's hilarious. It's true, but I laugh, and it's like that happened a couple of times where I would come to you and I would say, there's this thing that feels off, and logic, like even attachment theory logic says what to do in this state is to do XYZ, and I would be like, I feel like I already have the answers to that without any logical reason to know that. And you and the other coaches would literally say, well, I think you need to trust that. And you would also say, like, it's true, like the data says to heal for you to find out this, that, and the other, but this kind of trumps it. And that was, I feel like that's what I give to people in my program. It's just like, okay, right. Like no one else is going to support because I'm the only one feeling this. Right. So it's such a beautiful co-creation. I absolutely love it.
Yes. I agree. It's such a moment that I'm always going to slow down for if someone's saying like, oh yeah, he did this and this, which like maybe a books wise on the books looks fine, but like God is like, I just don't feel safe with him. It's like, okay, like, obviously safety, hello, but like also just that like slowing, pulsing kind of like knowing it's like, oh, we're going to slow down. We're going to listen to that over anything else on paper. Because that is so powerful. And we have to listen, we have to slow down. And I think there is something about women supporting women around this that is so powerful, because I think patriarchal society has really undermined our deep listening of these voices that we hear in our being, and also has undermined our connection with our bodies.
Oh, absolutely.
Reconnecting with other women, reconnecting with our bodies provides us with intense power for our lives.
Absolutely. That is very, very, very true. So, well, we'll have to wrap it up, but I want to talk to you for hours. I mean, I feel like we could just go on and on. I'd like to have you share what's the best way for people to connect with you and sign up for the program. Of course, we'll have it in the show notes and all of that, but what would you like people to know?
Yeah. So if you know that you're really ready to shift your patterns in your love life, shift your destructive patterns, become healthy, become securely attached, find a healthy partner, really learn a dating protocol that works, then we would love to have you in the Rewire for Love program. All you have to do is go to empowerlove.us/apply. That's empowerlove.us/apply.
Yeah, we'll have the link in the show notes.
And you'll book your free love breakthrough session there.
Which is very helpful, by the way. That free session is very helpful.
Yeah, you just doing that is going to get a ton of value. And on the call, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be helping you see kind of what are your patterns, what's going on, what are the things that are your blind spots, and then helping you, really showing you how we are going to help you with those in the program. And then you can see if it's a good fit for you.
Wonderful.
So just doing that call, exactly, it's an hour long. We're going to be putting all of our attention on your love life. And so just doing it, you're going to get a ton of value. So I definitely recommend, if this podcast is resonating with you, if what we're talking about is resonating with you, like listen to your intuition, listen to your body. If it feels right, book that call. Yeah.
Highly recommend it. Love you, love your work. And thank you for being here today, Maya.
Yes. And did you want to offer something to your listeners?
Oh, well, we actually have a little clip of an ad, but I will mention now. Okay. So if you sign up, you get a one-on-one session with you, which is equal to $500 in value. So, I mean, I literally
all they have to do is on the call, they should say, what's the code? Should we say Betsy?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I love that. Let's do, on the breakthrough call, the code is Betsy 100.
Okay.
And we'll make sure that you get routed to that 1 hour extra 1 hour extra coaching call with me. It'll be over Zoom. It's worth $500, and that will be added to your 4-month program.
Very special. That's very generous. Thank you.
Yeah.
How to Trust Your Intuition, the podcast, is written, produced, and created by me, your host, Betsy LaFay. Music provided by Ben Talmy. If you don't want to be like that pilot that is 80% sure you'll get to your next destination safely, and you want to take the right class to learn the right language, and guess what? Intuition is a language. Head over to howtotrustyourintuition.com. I hope this podcast has been helpful to you. If it has, please forward it to a friend who you think it could also make a difference for. There's something that you can do for me and everyone else who listens to this podcast as well. If you hit subscribe, you'll never miss another episode. It'll also help the show get to other people. And of course, I know you've heard other podcast hosts say this before, but it's totally true. If you leave us a 5-star rating and a review, it helps other people like you discover this podcast. We all need to learn to trust our intuition. So, hit subscribe, give us a 5-star review, and write a little blurb while you're there. Your intuition will thank you.